Well, the news that a number of United States senators are making very, very loud and unhappy noises about the nuclear deal with Iran is kind of amusing. You almost need to be a psychoanalyst to figure out what's going on here. We've had Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois and other senators saying things like this nuclear deal is a slap in the face to Israel, and I believe one even said that it's a death sentence for Israel. And this, on the face of it, it sounds that they're just echoing the talking points of their leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. But it's so extreme, this kind of rhetoric, the slap in the face or the death sentence, it leads one to suspect that there's a sort of an unconscious reaction against the knowledge that these senators are absolute and complete slaves of Zionism. And at some level, they don't like it. These people are essentially traitors. They are in the pay of a foreign power, a hostile foreign power, mind you, a foreign power which has repeatedly attacked the United States and used infiltration of places of power in the United States to get away with it.
Do you ever wonder why the U.S. has such a strong relationship with Israel, a relationship that President Obama himself has referred to as, quote, an unbreakable bond? One of the reasons the connection between these two countries is so close might be because of a powerful lobbying effort. AIPAC, or the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, is self-described as the most important organization affecting the U.S.'s relationship with Israel. The lobby has tens of thousands of members, and its annual policy conference is one of Washington's largest gathering of lawmakers, exceeded only by the State of the Union address.
Most important positions in our government are occupied by foreign nationals, and those foreign nationals are dual citizen Israelis. I have said for so long that we could solve our economic problems in an instant. The same day we could wipe out all our economic problems simply by recollecting all the dual citizen Israeli Americans. And they are traitors and guilty of treason by definition. By definition they are. You can't be a citizen of another country, and you certainly can't be a citizen of another country and pretend to be running this one, which is what you've had in Washington for, do you know how long?
As long as the Israeli lobby has the financial power to elect the United States Congress and the President of the United States, the American government will do nothing. The United States would have to take AIPAC and make it register as a foreign agent so that it couldn't purchase our elections.
It is very clear that over a period of the last 40-odd years, that the penetration of the American political process, the effective subordination of the Congress in particular to Israel, when an Israeli prime minister can get 29 standing ovations from a Congress that can't give that much support to one of their own presidents, no matter how outlandish the statements, you have something as close to a puppet agency as you're going to find. Our policy in the Middle East has for decades been manipulated increasingly in terms of what benefits Israel and not what benefits the United States, even when that is individuals who are sworn officials of the United States government. And to me, when a sworn official of the United States government, whether or not that person has dual Israeli citizenship, contrives crises and tragedies like 9/11, contrives wars like Afghanistan and Iraq, and now tries to get us into a war with Iran, all in the service of Israel, spending American lives in that process, they commit high treason, and they need to be treated in that manner. And you look at the people riddling the American government, all of the Middle East people in State Defense and the National Security Council, Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul Wolfowitz, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Douglas Feith, who used to be a friend of mine, by the way, from Philadelphia. These people were all part of the neoconservative movement. Many of these people are dual U.S.-Israeli nationals. All of their primary allegiance is to Israel.
Meet neoconservative Mehrav Wormser. She founded a charity that monitors the Arab press for anti-Semitic opinions. Her husband David is an advisor at the State Department, one of those mines the president borrowed from the AEI. She's part of a group of neocons who've been particularly influential post 9/11 because they specialize in the Middle East.
You have a story here about ideas and love among people, and it's true, and I'm not being cynical about it. It's real, fundamental love and power, because some of those ideas make policy, and some of the people in the group are policymakers, and we function and we view ourselves as a group, and we will all stand for each other, in defense of each other, all the way. Yes, many of us are Jewish. There's no need to apologize for that. Most of us, all of us, in fact, are pro-Israel. Some of us more fiercely so than others. But we have no problem also criticizing Israel.
Well, that paper in 1996, the Clean Break paper, that was the paper that led to accusations of dual loyalty.
There is no dual loyalty.
The accusation in Arab circles, and some people in Washington say this as well, but generally they're too polite to put it this way, but let me say it anyway, is that the administration has been hijacked by a small group of often pro-Zionist intellectuals without any real popular backing who've somehow persuaded President Bush to go to war with Iran.
No,
No
contrary to
conspiracy.
popular belief,
No
there is no
conspiracy.
conspiracy. And the group would not have been so powerful was it not for an administration and a president who is susceptible and is willing to adopt many of those ideas.
The vote was overwhelming, expressing the U.S. House of Representatives' quote, unwavering commitment to Israel. One by one, both Republican and Democratic members took turns praising Israel.
The world must know that America stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel in its ongoing struggle for security and peace.
Unlike the indiscriminate rocket attacks launched by Hamas, Israel's precision strikes are a defensive last resort necessary to protect her people. It's clear that the Israeli government is taking a measured response.
While Israel seeks to live in peace alongside a Palestinian state, Hamas seeks to kill or expel every Jew from the Middle East.
390 members voted in favor of the resolution, with only 5 opposed. Among them, Republican Ron Paul of Texas.
We definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this.
Pro-Israel political lobbies are powerful, well-organized, and well-funded. Most U.S. politicians know unqualified support for Israel is a sure ticket to lavish praise, ample campaign contributions, and re-election, while anything less may lead to funds drying up, accusations of anti-Semitism or being soft on terrorism, and ultimately political self-destruction.
I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars. And if you open your mouth, you get targeted. And if they don't beat you at the poll, they'll put you in prison. It's an objective assessment that no one will have the courage to speak about. They're controlling much of our foreign policy. They're influencing much of our domestic policy. Wolfowitz, as Undersecretary of Defense, manipulated President Bush #2 back into Iraq. They pushed definitely to try and get Bush before he left to move into Iran. We're conducting an expansionist policy of Israel, and everybody's afraid to say it. They control much of the media, they control much of the commerce of the country, and they control powerfully both bodies of the Congress. They own the Congress.
Well, you know, I think the first thing to note, and I want to be sure that this is emphasized, is that Jewish nationalism or Zionism is not Judaism. It has nothing to do with Judaism. Many of the Zionists are very secular Jews. They are not practicing Jews in a religious sense. The thing that's intriguing about Zionism, and I think I use the phrase that it's a real witch's brew of xenophobia, ultranationalism, and militarism, with a nice scrap of regional imperialism built into it. Most nationalism is not like that. Most nationalism is intended to be a unifying force, but it doesn't go to such an extreme level. A second element of it is that when you have competing nationalisms, it's very, very rare to find anything that involves the level of antipathy and hatred to the other side.
I think we always have to pay attention to context when we're looking at any particular one incident, and we need to investigate it carefully. When we think about the State Department definition, which seeks to codify what anti-Semitism is, it's such a flawed definition that it can virtually encompass any particular act without any real regard for context, although it pretends that it does. For example, the State Department definition claims that stating that a particular Jewish person has more loyalty to the state of Israel than they do to their own country is necessarily an example of anti-Semitism, where the truth is that that's one of the fundamental premises of Zionism. And if you go back and look at the statements, say, of Theodor Herzl, who's wrote really what's considered the founding text of Zionism, he argued very clearly that Jews are one people, and therefore it's useless for them to be patriots to the countries in which they reside. So there's times when a statement like that is contained in the definition of the State Department would actually undermine the founding premises of Zionism itself.
For decades, Capitol Hill has been a stronghold for Israel. Lopsided votes here, a kind of counterweight to lopsided votes here at the United Nations General Assembly. That's not expected to change.
Everything that Israel does in the occupied territories, U.S. taxpayers are paying for. The U.S. gives the financing, it gives the military support.
Israel receives as much foreign economic assistance as all the countries combined in the world.
Israel and the United States have a special relationship.
Unprecedented.
So special that Israel gets more than half of all U.S. foreign aid. Simply put, the U.S. gives Israel money. Lots of it. To be precise, a grand total of $121 billion and counting. And unlike U.S. aid to most other countries, money to Israel is given primarily to its military. Why?
The security of Israel, preventing a nuclear Iran, and ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
But it's a military that has been accused of war crimes by the United Nations and called trigger-happy by Amnesty International. No matter. As foreign policy analyst Stephen Walt puts it,
the United States gives Israel generous diplomatic, economic, and military support, and does so unconditionally, regardless of what it does.
And the support comes in many forms. First, there's the U.S. budget. Congress gives Israel on average $3 billion a year, $3 billion of U.S. taxpayers' money. Uncle Sam also doles out more aid by funding military research programs. In 2014, $504 million went to joint U.S.-Israeli military research and to the development of anti-rocket defense systems. One of those systems, Iron Dome, has cost the U.S. $720 million, a price tag that is going up as we speak. Then there are the additional multi-million-dollar weapons deals. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. And a $1 billion U.S. weapons stockpile that Israel can access in times of emergency. All in all, with the U.S.'s help, Israel has one of the most advanced militaries and is one of the top 10 arms dealers in the world. Guess who's one of its biggest customers?
First of all, we have links and communication with China, and I think it's very important for Israel to have those kind of links. Secondly, there is some blames about transfer of technology from American original technology to China by us. I must react to it that we are committed to the United States, not to deliver any kind of items, technology of the United States without any license, not only to China, but to any country. And we are trying to keep it very much